Captain Lisa Martinez walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council building. The doors were so tall that 20 humans could stand on each other's shoulders and still not reach the top. Everything here was built to make visitors feel. Small Lisa kept her head high and her shoulders straight. She would not let them see her fear. The hallway stretched ahead of her like a tunnel with no end. Strange lights floated in the air without any wires or supports. The walls showed moving pictures of distant worlds and alien cities. Some of the creatures in those pictures had too many eyes. Others had no eyes at all. Lisa had studied them. All during her long trip to this place, her boots made soft sounds on the smooth floor. The floor felt warm under her feet, even through her thick soles. Everything here was designed to confuse humans. Temperature changed every few steps. The lights got brighter and dimmer without warning. Even the air smelled different every time she took a breath. Admiral Peter Hayes walked beside her. He was her commanding officer and had known her since she was a young officer, fresh out of the academy. His gray hair was cut short and neat. Uniform had more medals than she could count. But today, even he looked worried. "Remember what we discussed?" Peter said quietly. "They want you to fail. They expect you to lose your temper or break down crying. Do not give them what they want." Lisa nodded. She had heard this advice many times during the past month. Everyone back on Earth was counting on her. If she failed today, humanity would never join the galactic community. They would remain alone among the stars forever. Dr. Amanda Brooks hurried. To catch up with them, she carried a large bag full of papers and data files. Amanda had spent years studying alien cultures. She knew more about the different species than almost any other human alive. Her hand shook slightly as she walked. "The crystalline hegemony representatives arrived this morning," Amanda said. "They brought 3 witnesses to speak against us. The Voidwalkers sent their best legal minds. Even the Stellar Republic seems to be keeping their distance from our case. How many species will speak for us?" Lisa asked. Amanda looked down at her papers. 2. Maybe 3 if we are lucky. Lisa felt a cold weight in her stomach. 12 species would judge humanity today. If only 2 or 3 spoke in their favor. The mathematics were simple. They were going to lose. They reached the end of the hallway. Another set of doors waited for them. These doors were even bigger than the first ones. Guards stood on both sides. The guards were not human. One looked like a giant insect with blue skin. The other seemed to be made of living crystal that rang like bells when it moved. "Captain Martinez," the crystal guard said. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "You are expected in the main chamber. Your species is on trial today." The words hit Lisa like a punch to the chest. On trial, not applying for membership. Not requesting to join. On trial, like criminals. The doors opened slowly. The chamber beyond was enormous. Ooh! The ceiling disappeared into darkness, high above. 12 different seating areas surrounded a central platform. Each area was designed for a different type of alien body. Some had pools of liquid IV creatures that lived underwater. Others had platforms that floated in the air. Lisa walked to the center platform. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. She could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her every move. Some of those eyes were familiar from her studies. Others belonged to creatures she had never seen before. The Zephyrian prosecutor stood up from his seating area. Ambassador Kethvel was 7 feet tall, with skin like purple leather. His forearms moved in patterns that Lisa knew meant aggression in his culture. 2 extra eyes on the sides of his head let him watch her while he spoke to the other judges. "Honored Counsel," Kethvel said in perfect English, "we are here to examine whether the species called humans deserves membership in our federation. The evidence suggests they do not." Holographic displays appeared in the air around Lisa. She saw scenes from recent battles between humans and the Hive Collective. Human soldiers charged into enemy fire without thinking. They made choices that cost many lives. They acted on emotion instead of logic. "Observe their primitive warfare," Kethval continued. "They sacrifice themselves needlessly. They make decisions based on feelings rather than facts. They are too unstable to join civilized society." One by one, representatives from different species stood up to speak. The crystalline hegemony called humans chaotic and unpredictable, the Voidwalkers said. Humans were violent without purpose. The gas giant collective claimed humans could not be trusted in peaceful negotiations. Lisa listened to each accusation. She watched the evidence they presented. Everything they said was true in some way. Humans did act on emotion. They did make sacrifices that seemed wasteful to logical minds. They did fight in ways that other species found confusing. But as she listened, Lisa began to notice something important. The aliens were listing human qualities as weaknesses, but they did not understand what those qualities really meant. They saw sacrifice and called it waste. They saw emotion and called it instability. They saw unpredictability and called it dangerous. Dr. Amanda Brooks tried to defend humanity with her prepared speeches about human culture and history. She showed examples of human art and music. She explained how humans had overcome challenges on their home world. But the alien judges seemed bored by her presentations. Cultural achievements are irrelevant, said the representative from the AE. Silicon Mines. We judge species by their ability to function logically in galactic society. Humans fail this basic test. Admiral Peter Hayes stood up from the observation area. Honored judges, humans have proven themselves in battle alongside Federation forces. We have fought the Hive Collective and won victories that your own species could not achieve. Yes, Kethful replied, but those victories came at terrible cost. You lost more ships and personnel than any logical species would accept. Your methods are wasteful and inefficient. As the day continued, Lisa felt the weight of defeat growing heavier. Every argument in humanity's favor was turned against them. Every strength was called a weakness. Every victory was called wasteful. But something else was growing in Lisa's mind. A plan was forming. She began to understand that the aliens' greatest strength might also be their greatest weakness. They were so focused on logic and efficiency that they could not see other ways of thinking. When the day's testimony ended, the judges announced they would make their final decision tomorrow. Lisa would have one chance to defend her species. It's one opportunity to prove that humans deserve to join the galactic community. As she walked out of the chamber, Lisa caught sight of her reflection in the polished walls. She was smiling. Not because she was confident of victory, but because she finally understood how to win. Lisa woke up before the artificial sunrise in her guest quarters. The bed was too soft for her liking. Everything in the alien facility was designed to be comfortable for dozens of different species, which meant it was not quite right for any of them. She had barely slept, but her mind was clear and focused. Today would bring the final test. Ambassador Kethvel had announced it at the end of yesterday's session. Instead of more speeches and evidence, the Council would judge humanity through action. Lisa and her crew would face a combat simulation designed by the Hive Collectives. Best tactical minds. Commander Jake Thompson knocked on her door at exactly 6 in the morning. Jake had been her tactical officer for 3 years. He was a quiet man who thought before he spoke and never wasted words. His black hair was starting to show gray at the temples, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "The simulation chamber is ready," Jake said. "The crew is waiting for your briefing." Lisa followed him through corridors that seemed different in the morning light. The floating lights had changed color from blue to yellow. The wall displays showed peaceful scenes instead of the war footage from yesterday. Even the air smelled like flowers instead of metal. They reached the briefing room where her crew waited. These 5 people represented all of humanity in the eyes of the galactic community. If they failed today, Earth would remain isolated among the stars for generations. Lieutenant Amanda Rachel Stone sat at the far end of the table. She had grown up in the asteroid mining colonies where one mistake with an engine could kill everyone on the station. Her dark skin showed small scars from years of working with dangerous machinery. Her hands never stopped moving, always adjusting something or checking calculations. Major Carlos Rivera occupied the chair closest to the door. He was a Marine who had fought in every major battle against the Hive Collective over the past 5 years. His broad shoulders and thick arms showed the results of a lifetime of physical training. But his most important feature was his eyes. They held the kind of calm that only came from facing death many times and walking away. Dr. Alina Cross sat between them, reading medical reports on her portable screen. She was the youngest member of the crew at 28 years old, but she had already saved more lives than doctors twice her age. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple style that kept it out of her way during surgery. She never wore makeup or jewelry that might interfere with her work. Sergeant First Class Bobby Clark rounded out the team. He was an engineer who specialized in making broken things work again. His red hair was always messy, and his uniform always had grease stains somewhere. But when equipment failed in the middle of a battle, Bobby was the person everyone wanted on their side. "The simulation will begin in 2 hours," Lisa said. "The alien observers expect us to fail. They've designed this test to exploit what they think are human weaknesses." She activated the holographic display in the center of the table. Showed a star system with 6 planets and 2 asteroid belts. Red markers indicated Hive collective forces. Blue markers showed the position of their ship, the UES Defiance. "We are outnumbered 10-1, Jake said, studying the tactical display. "Our ship is smaller and less armed than anything the Hive collective has in the system. Standard military doctrine says this is an impossible situation." "Good thing we never followed standard military doctrine," Carlos said with a slight smile. Rachel leaned forward to examine the engine specifications. "They have given us a ship that is fast, but fragile. The weapons are adequate, but nothing special. It looks like they want us to try a hit-and-run strategy, which means they have probably prepared counters for hit-and-run tactics," Alina added. "It feels like a trap designed to make us do exactly what they expect." Lisa nodded. Brooke spent the night analyzing the simulation parameters. She discovered something interesting. The test is not just difficult. It is specifically designed to trigger human emotional responses that the aliens consider weaknesses. She changed the display to show psychological profiles. They expect fear to make us panic. They expect anger to make us reckless. Expect our bonds with each other to make us vulnerable to manipulation. Bobby wiped his hands on a dirty cloth. "So what do we do? Act like emotionless robots?" "No," Lisa said firmly. "We do exactly the opposite. We embrace what makes us human. We use our emotions and instincts as weapons they cannot predict or counter." The crew exchanged glances. They had worked together long enough to communicate without words. Each of them had survived situations that should have killed them by trusting their instincts in each other. "The aliens think logically," Jake said. "Slowly, their computers can predict logical responses. They cannot predict illogical choices that somehow work." "Exactly," Lisa replied. "Rachel, I want you to prepare the engines for modifications that no sane engineer would attempt. Carlos, plan attacks that make no tactical sense but feel right to you. Alina, throw away the medical protocols and trust your instincts about who to save and when. And Bobby," she continued, "I want you to break things in ways that somehow make them work better." They spent the next hour going over the simulation parameters in detail. The Hive collective forces were positioned perfectly to counter logical human strategies. Every obvious approach was blocked. Every reasonable tactic had been anticipated and prepared for. But as they studied the enemy positions, patterns began to emerge. The alien observers had made one crucial mistake. They had designed their test based on what they thought humans would do, not on what humans actually could do. "They expect us to protect our ship above all else," Rachel observed. "Every defensive position assumes we will prioritize survival over mission success. They expect us to retreat when faced with overwhelming odds," Carlos added. "Their pursuit patterns are designed to catch ships that run away. They expect us to follow medical priorities that save the most people with the least risk," Alina said. "Their targeting systems focus on crew members who would be logical choices for evacuation." Lisa felt excitement building in her chest. The aliens had given them a gift without realizing it. They had shown humanity exactly what they did not understand about human nature. As they walked toward the simulation chamber, Lisa gathered her crew around her one final time. "Remember who we are?" she said quietly. "We are the species that looked at an impossible universe and decided to explore it anyway. We are the people who fall down and get up again. We are the ones who choose hope over logic and love over safety. The chamber doors opened to reveal a space the size of a small city. Holographic projectors filled the air with stars and planets. Their ship, the UES Defiance, waited in the center like a toy surrounded by giants. Hundreds of alien observers filled viewing platforms around the chamber's edges. Lisa could see Ambassador Kethvel making notes on his portable screen. Species representatives leaned forward in anticipation of watching humanity fail. As Lisa strapped herself into the captain's chair, she looked around at her crew. Each of them was ready to die for the others without question. Each of them trusted the others completely. Each of them was about to prove that logic was not the only path to victory. The simulation began with alarms, screaming and red lights flashing. The Hive Collective had found them and was moving to attack. Lisa smiled as she gave her first order. It was time to show the galaxy what humans could do when they stopped trying to be something else. The first wave of Hive Collective ships appeared on the screen like angry hornets. 30 enemy vessels moved in perfect formation toward the UES Defiance, their weapons charged with energy that made the space around them glow red. Any logical commander would order an immediate retreat. "All ahead full," Lisa said calmly. "Take us straight at them." Jake looked at her with surprise, but did not question the order. His fingers moved across the navigation controls. The ship accelerated toward the enemy fleet instead of away from it. In the observation galleries, alien representatives made urgent notes. This was not what their simulations had predicted. "Rachel, give me everything the engines have," Lisa continued. "I want speed that should not be possible." Rachel's hands flew over her engineering controls. She began shutting down life support in unused sections of the ship. She redirected power from weapon systems to the engines. She pushed the reactor beyond safe operating limits. Warning lights flashed across her board. "Captain, these settings will burn out the engines in less than 10 minutes, Rachel warned. "Good," Lisa replied. "I want them to think we are desperate and making mistakes." The Hive Collective ships spread out to surround the approaching human vessel. Their tactical computers calculated the optimal positions to destroy an enemy that was charging directly at them. But something felt wrong to the alien observers watching. Humans were supposed to be emotional and unpredictable, but this seemed too simple. Carlos studied the enemy formation on his tactical display. "They are setting up a trap. If we continue on this course, they will have us surrounded with no escape route." "Perfect," Lisa said. "Alina, I want you to start medical preparations for heavy casualties. Make it obvious what you are doing." Lena began setting up emergency medical stations throughout the ship. She ordered medical supplies to be moved to the bridge and main corridors. She activated trauma protocols that filled the air with the sound of medical equipment being prepared. To any observer, it looked like the humans expected to take terrible damage. Bobby worked frantically in the engine room, making modifications that seemed random and desperate. He disconnected safety systems and jury-rigged power couplings that should have exploded. His work looked like the efforts of an engineer. It was running out of time and options. The enemy ships completed their encirclement. The used Defiance was now surrounded by 30 vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed. The tactical situation was hopeless by any logical measure. In the observation galleries, Ambassador Kethvel smiled with satisfaction. "Hive Collective. Vessels, this is Captain Martinez. Lisa broadcast on an open channel. We surrender. Repeat, we surrender. Please do not destroy our ship." The alien observers exchanged glances of confusion. Humans were not known for surrendering easily. Several species representatives began to whisper among themselves. This felt wrong somehow. They could not identify what was bothering them. The Hive Collective commander responded with mechanical precision. "Human vessel, reduce speed and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your destruction." "Understood," Lisa replied. "We are powering down weapons and reducing speed." The ship's weapons went offline. The engines throttled back to half power. Everything appeared to be proceeding exactly as the enemy expected. But Lisa's crew was ready for the real battle too. "Begin now," Lisa whispered. Rachel hit the emergency release on the engine modifications Bobby had installed. Instead of shutting down, The engines suddenly produced 3 times their normal power. The ship accelerated so quickly that the crew was pressed into their seats by forces that should have crushed human bodies. But Alina had prepared for this. Her medical preparations were not for treating casualties. They were for helping the crew survive the extreme acceleration that was about to occur. She had distributed special medications and positioned support equipment to keep everyone conscious during maneuvers that would kill normal people. The sudden acceleration caught the Hive collective ships completely off guard. Their formation was designed to contain a slow-moving or stationary target. They had never planned for prey that could suddenly move faster than their own ships. Carlos waited until the perfect moment, when the enemy ships were closest together, then fired every weapon the ship had directly into their formation. But he did not aim for the largest targets or the most important ships. Instead, he targeted the smallest vessels, the ones that other species would consider least threatening. The alien observers watched in confusion as human weapons destroyed scout ships and communication relays instead of major warships. It seemed like a waste of ammunition, another sign of human illogical thinking. But Carlos knew something the aliens did not understand. The small ships he destroyed were the ones that coordinated the Hive Collective's group tactics. Without them, the larger ships became individuals instead of a unified fleet. Their perfect formations began to break apart as each ship tried to pursue the human vessel. Independently, Bobby's modifications to the ship's systems began to show their true purpose. What had looked like desperate jury-rigging was actually a sophisticated plan to make the ship unpredictable. The engines produced power in irregular bursts that made their course impossible to calculate. The weapons fired at random intervals that confused enemy targeting systems. Rachel pushed her engines beyond every safety limit while somehow keeping them from exploding. She had grown up in space, where a single mistake could kill everyone around you, but she had also learned that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the safest one. They are trying to regroup, Jake reported as he watched the enemy formation attempt to reorganize. But they cannot predict our movement patterns. 'Cause we do not have movement patterns, Lisa replied. Alina, how are our people holding up? Everyone is still conscious, Alina answered. But we cannot maintain these forces much longer without permanent damage. Lisa watched the tactical display as the Hive Collective ships struggled to adapt to an enemy that refused to behave logically. Their computers kept trying to predict human actions based on military doctrine and rational thought. But the humans were not following any doctrine except their own instincts. Carlos, give me your gut feeling about their next move, Lisa said. Carlos stared at the enemy formation for several seconds. Logi said they should consolidate and wait for reinforcements. Military doctrine suggested they should fall back to a defensive position. But something in Carlos's experience told him they would do something else. They are going to split into 3 groups and try to herd us toward the asteroid field, he said finally. It feels like what I would do if I were angry and wanted to trap someone, even though they are machines. The Hive Collective learns from the species they fight, Carlos explained. They have been fighting humans for years. Maybe they have learned some of our emotional responses. Lisa nodded. Then we give them what they think they want. Rachel plot a course for the asteroid field, and it looked like we were running scared. The Use Defiance changed course toward the densest part of the asteroid belt. The ship's movements became more erratic, as if the crew was panicking. Emergency transmissions filled the communication channels with requests for assistance that would never come. The Hive Collective ships took the bait. They split into 3 groups exactly as Carlos had predicted and began herding the human ship toward what they thought would be a trap. But Lisa and her crew had other plans for the asteroid field. In the observation galleries, the alien representatives watched with growing confusion. Nothing about this battle made sense, according to their understanding of logical tactics. The humans seemed to be making every mistake possible, yet somehow they were still alive and fighting. Ambassador Kethvel stopped taking notes and leaned forward to watch more carefully. Something was happening here that his tactical computers could not explain. The humans were either incredibly lucky or incredibly clever, and he was beginning to suspect it was not luck. The asteroid field stretched ahead of them like a maze made of rock and metal.
Oh.
Some asteroids were as small as houses, others as large as cities. They spun slowly through space, their surfaces scarred by millions of years of collisions. To most ship commanders, this was a place to avoid. To Lisa and her crew, it was exactly where they wanted to be. "They are closing in," Jake reported as he watched the three enemy groups converge on their position. 18 ships total, moving in standard pursuit formation. "Standard is good," Lisa said. "Standard means predictable." Rachel guided the ship between two massive asteroids, using their gravity to help change direction. The maneuver saved fuel and made their course harder to follow. But more importantly, it positioned them exactly where Lisa wanted to be for the next part of her plan. "Carlos, remember what you told me about the siege of Europa?" Lisa asked. Carlos nodded slowly. During that battle, he had been trapped in a mining station with no weapons and no way to escape. The enemy had superior numbers and firepower. By every logical measure, he should have died there. Instead, he had used the station's mining equipment as weapons and turned the asteroid itself into a trap. "You want me to think like a miner instead?" "Of a soldier," Carlos said with understanding. "Exactly." "Bobby, how much explosive material do we have on board?" Bobby checked his inventory on the engineering panel. "Standard ship stores. Nothing special. Maybe enough to clear a small asteroid." "If we shaped the charges perfectly, what if we did not worry about shaping the charges?" Lisa asked. "What if we just wanted to make the biggest explosion possible?" Bobby's eyes lit up with the kind of excitement that made other engineers nervous. "Well, if we combined all our explosive materials with the ship's reactor core and maybe some fuel cells, we could probably crack an asteroid the size of a small moon. But the ship would be destroyed in the process." In the observation galleries, Dr. Amanda Brooks leaned forward to listen more carefully. She recognized the tone in Bobby's voice. It was the same tone human engineers used when they were about to do something that violated every safety regulation ever written. "Alina, medical question," Lisa continued. "How long can humans survive in spacesuits with portable life support?" 6 hours if they stay calm and do not exert themselves, Alina replied. "Maybe 8 hours if they are very lucky." "What about if they are very unlucky but very determined?" Alina smiled despite the danger they were facing. "Humans have survived impossible situations before. I would not bet against us." The first enemy ships entered the asteroid field behind them. The Hive collective vessels moved carefully, using their sensors to avoid collisions. Their tactical computers calculated safe paths through the floating rocks. They maintained perfect formation, even in the dangerous environment. "They are being careful," Jake observed. "They do not want to damage their ships on the asteroids." "Good," Lisa said. "Careful means slow. Rachel, take us to the center of the field. Find me the biggest asteroid you can." Rachel's fingers danced across her controls as she searched for their target. The asteroid field had been formed by the destruction of a planet millions of years ago. Some pieces were solid rock, others were hollow shells that had once been parts of the planet's core. "There," Rachel said, pointing to a massive shape on the display. "That one is almost 10 miles across. It's mostly iron and nickel with a hollow center. It is perfect." Lisa studied the asteroid on her screen. It was indeed perfect. It's large enough to hide their ship, dense enough to provide protection from enemy weapons, and positioned exactly where she needed it to be for her plan to work. "Take us inside," Lisa ordered. "Find a place where we can work without being detected." The EU's Defiance slipped through a crack in the asteroid's surface that was barely wide, enough for the ship. Inside, they found a cavern that stretched for miles in every direction. The walls sparkled with veins of metal, or the ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. "Bobby, Alina, Carlos, get suited up," Lisa said. "We have work to do. Jake, you stay here and monitor the enemy positions." "What about you, Captain?" Rachel asked. "I am going with them. This plan only works if we all commit to it completely." The crew spent the next 2 hours working with tools and explosives in the asteroid's cavern. They drilled holes in the walls and ceiling. They planted charges and patterns that would direct the explosion in specific directions. They turned the asteroid into a weapon that weighed millions of tons. Outside, the Hive collective ships had spread throughout the asteroid field. They were searching methodically for the human vessel. Sensors probed every large rock, every hiding place. It was only a matter of time before they found the UES Defiance. "Captain," Jake's voice crackled through the radio, "they have found our entrance. 3 ships are moving to investigate." Lisa looked around at her crew. They were floating in space. Suits inside a hollow asteroid, surrounded by enough explosives to destroy everything within 50 miles. By any logical measure, they were about to commit suicide. But Lisa had never felt more confident in her life. "Everyone back to the ship," she ordered. "It is time for the final act." They sealed themselves back inside the UES Defiance, just as the first enemy ship entered the asteroid's cavern. The Hive collective vessel moved slowly, its weapons charged and ready. Behind it, 2 more ships waited at the entrance to provide backup. "This is your last chance to surrender," the enemy commander broadcast. "You are trapped with no escape route." Lisa activated the ship's communication system. "You are right. We are trapped. But so are you." She looked around at her crew. One final time. Each of them nodded to show they were ready. They had known this moment would come when they first planned their strategy. They were willing to sacrifice everything to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. "Rachel, on my mark, give me everything the engines have," Lisa said. "Bobby, prepare to detonate all charges simultaneously. Carlos, target the cavern ceiling directly above the enemy ships. Elena, activate emergency medical protocols for extreme trauma." The Hive collective ships moved deeper into the cavern, confident that they had cornered their prey. Their sensors detected the human ship, but also registered massive amounts of explosive material throughout the asteroid. Their computers calculated that the humans had enough firepower to destroy everything in the immediate area. "They would not detonate those charges," the enemy commander transmitted. "It would kill them as well as us." Lisa smiled as she gave her final order. "That is where you are wrong. It absolutely would. Bobby, light them up." The explosion that followed could be seen from the observation gallery where hundreds of alien representatives watched in stunned silence. The asteroid cracked apart like an egg, releasing energy equivalent to a small star-going supernova. 3 Hive collective ships inside were vaporized instantly. But somehow, possibly, the UES Defiance emerged from the explosion intact. Rachel had used the blast wave itself to propel their ship clear of the destruction. The explosion that should have killed them had instead launched them at incredible speed toward the remaining enemy vessels. The surviving Hive collective ships were so shocked by what they had witnessed that they failed to react in time. Carlos used their moment of confusion to destroy 4 more vessels with weapons fire that came from impossible angles. In the observation gallery, Ambassador Kethvel stood up slowly. His tactical computers had stopped trying to analyze human behavior. The simulation parameters were breaking down because they could not account for a species that would choose certain death to achieve victory, and somehow survive anyway. "End simulation," he announced in a voice that carried across the vast chamber. The holographic displays flickered and disappeared. The asteroid field vanished, as the remaining enemy ships faded away like ghosts. The UES Defiance floated alone in empty space, battered but victorious. Lisa and her crew slowly removed their helmets and looked around at each other. They were alive. Against all logic and probability, they had survived a plan that should have killed them all. More importantly, they had won. Dr. Elena Cross was the first to speak. "How did we survive that explosion?" "'Cause we are human," Lisa replied simply. "We do impossible things because someone has to do them. We survive because giving up is not an option. We win because we refuse to accept that we cannot." In the observation gallery, the alien representatives sat in stunned silence. They had designed a test to prove human inferiority. Instead, they had witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about logic, tactics, and survival. Ambassador Kethvel approached the viewing window and looked down at the small human ship. The crew inside had just demonstrated capabilities that his species' most advanced computers could not calculate or predict. They had turned weakness into strength, desperation into victory, and certain death into impossible survival. The vote will be unanimous, he said quietly to the other representatives. Humanity has earned its place among the stars. Lisa walked out of the simulation chamber with the same smile she had worn when she entered the Galactic Council building. 3 days earlier, she had always known they would win, not because humans were perfect, but because their imperfections made them capable of things that perfect beings could never achieve.